In designing fabrics for my menswear collection, I look to the world around me for inspiration. Learning about new things helps me design, and in a way provides the men who wear my clothes a glimpse into other worlds. In past seasons, I've been inspired by architecture, nature, the Southwest, the undersea world, and now mathematics. Each season, I select a theme that provides the design foundation for my whole line, from shirts and sweaters to jackets, pants, socks, ties, and even furniture. I use a computer to help me design. The computer is a great tool in designing. It helps me create much more elaborate and sophisticated fabrics because I'm able to be more prolific, quickly trying out design ideas, discarding those that don't work, and refining those I like. Recently, I began creating graphics using mathematical software. This in itself became a source of design inspiration. You don't have to be a mathematician to use these programs, and actually math was one of my weakest subjects in school. But I think the way math is taught makes it less interesting than it could be, because it can be so visual and creative, which I discovered working with these programs and their creators. I've learned more about mathematics, and the mathematicians have learned about design. This collaboration was so exciting, I assembled some of the top mathematicians for a symposium in New York, where we shared our ideas with people from the fields of science and fashion. A fractal is a geometrical figure in which a motif repeats itself on an ever-diminishing scale. Each element of the overall infinitely growing figure is self-similar to the original figure. The beginning form, which can be referred to as a seed, is transformed through repetition. One element, repeated onto itself, becomes a fern. Fractals were discovered by mathematicians in the late 1700s, but it wasn't until the 1980s when computers got fast enough that the mathematicians could bring their equations to visual life. Fractals can be linear or nonlinear. Linear fractals form many elements of nature. Clouds, mountains, plants are all fractal. This is one of the earliest fractals, dubbed the dragon by its inventor. Even music can be composed using fractal equations, like the odd piece you're about to hear. This is the Koch snowflake fractal, named after its developer. For this and many other designs, I take the form, or a part of it, rotate it, put it into a repeat in a size and arrangement that I think will be interesting on a man's body. I add in a color layout for the main design, and then often add a secondary design like a plait or a check to give it even more dimension. Because many of my fabrics are double woven and not simply printed, I can even use 2 layers of fabric and weave them together to achieve even more depth and dimension. There's a lot of experimentation that goes into creating these designs, and so the designs I ultimately come up with can be so much more intricate. That's the thrill of making these clothes, and what makes my design special. In a visual world where just about every design is derivative, I think my clothes stand out as truly unique. Nonlinear fractals come from points rather than lines. The most famous ones are the Mandelbrot set and the Julia set. The Mandelbrot set is named for its creator, Dr. Bernt Wahl Mandelbrot, and is considered the most complex mathematical object in the world today. These are infinite, somewhat psychedelic creations that contain within each level a replica of the whole. It's kind of a mind-blowing concept, isn't it? Since I'm a designer, I treat fractals as visual inspirations. I use these forms by traveling through them, like I'm on a space journey. I freeze my computer on a section that's interesting, and then I use these different frames in my designs. I like to know how my designs tie into mathematics, but I don't have to be a mathematician to use these programs. Julia set is actually a map of the behavior of z squared plus c at fixed c. But I'm not sitting at my desk with a calculator. I just think the visual output of these equations is really great, and I have a lot of success using them as design inspirations. For this design, I took a part of the Julia set and put it into repeat. I added color and an interesting weave. This sort of Dr. Seuss-looking form is part of the Mandelbrot set. Because it's so wild, I put a plaid running through it and used rich colors and a lot of black in the weave. The result is really beautiful, and we use this fabric for both a shirt and a sweater. Even though the Mandelbrot set is infinite, it is repeating, and some of the frames can be similar. So I'll be using this program for only one season. I had to be inventive about the way I use these forms in designing, in the different ways we arrange them, and pairing them with a variety of second layers to give them a whole new look. For this one, I arranged rotated sections of the Mandelbrot set into a grid, which is contrary to the randomness of a fractal. But it works for a shirt. This looks like the edge of the sun to me, like a solar flare. I took just a piece of it, put it in repeat, wove a subtle check through it, and the resulting shirt looks a lot like clouds, which ironically, or maybe mathematically, is another element of nature that is fractal. Designs using the Vector Automata program are created using these modules. I draw several linear shapes and also give some basic information about what direction I want the design to grow, the scale, the amount of repetitions, and collision rules. Most of the designs grow from the center out. The mathematics part of the program puts the elements from the modules together according to an equation. It's logical, but the outcome is like magic. I select just a piece of the growth of this design, and using other textile design software, manipulate it to create something that will work well as a shirt. You never know what kind of design will be created from different combinations of original figures. It's a great surprise and a lot of fun to work with. That's why I can use this program to design with for many seasons. People seem to respond better to those things that are symmetrical, rather than those that are asymmetrical. I think this is because most of the natural world around us is basically symmetrical, from flowers to our own bodies. Symmetrical design is found in the world around us that we have created, most prominently architecture. Mathematically, there are 17 different types of symmetries. The computer software I use allows me to take one basic shape and run it through these formulas, producing a huge variety of designs, all from one basic original shape. One simple rectangle is transformed into a variety of amazing designs through this program. I use the symmetry program a lot for the design of my neckties. Starting from this simple form, I dither the colors for an airbrush effect, which gives a lot of dimension and really brings it to life. These design programs give us basic elements to work with. There's still so many other factors that go into designing. It's not just like anyone can take these programs and suddenly create great fabrics. They are tools, like a paintbrush, and only in the right hands can create beauty. I take into consideration how they are produced, the capabilities of the weaving technique, color combinations, layers of different designs. Sometimes there are so many different elements added beyond what's created in these computer programs, one can hardly believe the fabrics produced came from the original form. Computer programs I've just shown you are all used in the creation of Jacquard weaves. But Jacquard weaving, especially in the way I want it produced, using very intricate thread arrangements, is more and more difficult for weavers to do, and so it's very expensive. I needed a way to make interesting weaves on the simpler Dobby loom to be able to produce enough shirts at a reasonable price for my customers' demand. There are limitations on how a Dobby loom can weave together a warp and weft, and so, without getting too technical, it's a challenge to make interesting designs. Most commonly, Dobbies are simple stripes or plaids, but they don't have to be. I worked closely with two brilliant mathematicians as they developed expert system software for my design needs. The software has been trained to respect the limitations of the Dobby loom while incorporating rules which help me create designs that push well beyond those traditionally done on this type of loom. It allows me to create really different thread arrangements that produce great designs. These are the most complex Dobby fabrics woven in the world today. We also created a way to add color using the expert system, which makes color and pattern work in tandem with each other. I'd tell the mathematicians something, like when the pattern reaches a peak in the weaving grid, split the color. We talk back and forth until they really understand what I need, and then they come up with a way to do it, mostly by finding a mathematical basis for something that I can only describe by talking about threads and colors. It's really amazing, and it makes my designing easier and better. People think that math is boring. They certainly don't think math is creative. And what I've learned through working with these programs and their creators, and through my years of designing, is there's a lot of beauty in the world around us. We sometimes just have to look harder and past our assumptions to see it. I try to discover those things and bring them to my customer through my clothing. And I hope he learns something too. It would be easy for me to do the same thing with a little variation every season. But what's the fun or challenge in that? I love my work, and I think my customer sees that in the clothes I designed for him.